All right, guys, we got a new section to the America Happens website called the Whistleblowers Forum, where you could go on there and anonymously or using your name post anything that you want and contact other whistleblowers to talk about what's really going on out there. All right, welcome to the latest episode of Blood Money. Today we have a very special guest back, Michael Lujan. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, sir. How are you doing?
Great. Thank you for coming on to the Blood Money podcast. So for the viewers out there, some of the things that we've been doing here at the America Happens Network is really following up on what is going on with Chad Bianco and the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. Of course, I was falsely accused, Vem Miller over here, falsely accused of trying to assassinate President Trump by Chad Bianco. And following this, Michael, if I could just give a little bit of background on why I am so spicy about Chad Bianco is because as I'm putting my case together against him, as you guys know, I've been working on a case that we filed the initial filing and we're about to submit this amended filing. What I'm realizing as I'm putting this timeline together is that not only did Chad Bianco get it clearly wrong on the outset, he kept at it. He kept doubling down, and he has the same evidence that I have, which I recorded, which is that, shows that none of what he's saying is true, but nonetheless, this man kept doubling down and really putting a target on my head for no reason. That's the thing that I'd say it's kind of upsetting, is that he knows it's all untrue. He knows I wasn't there to harm anybody. He knows the evidence is against him, but nonetheless, he keeps doubling down and trying to make me sound suspect, trying to say, oh, he had multiple passports, he had guns, and trying to use that as a way to essentially put a target on the back of my head after all the horrible stuff that he's already done. So as that kind of stuff has kind of come to fruition while I'm putting this case together, I got to tell you, I'm a little bit extra spicy on Mr. Chad Bianco. But Michael, tell me, take it from there, man. Tell me, what do you think?
Well, I think you're spot on your spice there, but the reality is you're a pawn in Bianco's political game. I think last time we spoke, I told you that when I spoke to Don Sharp, prior to my retirement in December of 2020, I questioned some of the decisions coming out of, the office of the sheriff, and he said they're all based on politics. So he had an opportunity to get his 15 minutes of fame by making an allegation or claim that his deputies and him being the leader of the department, that they had foiled another assassination attempt on President Trump, right? And we know now, and the department members that I have spoken to, and several community members that I have spoken to, they all know now that, excuse my language, that it was all bullshit. This was an opportunity to gain some media attention focused on, Riverside County and Sheriff Bianco. This was all focused to gain some political capital in his pending, or I'm going to say he's running for governor, because he had a fundraiser in Anaheim. So one can make a reasonable determination based on that fundraiser that he's running for governor. So, and the reason why he's doubling down on that, is he can't back away from it now. Now that you have had filed claims, of defamation claims, or quite frankly, false, challenging his false claims. Now he's going to hide behind the shield of no comment due to pending litigation, right? But that's the way, Sheriff Bianco operates. He has no problem assassinating the character of folks that disagree with him. You're looking at a manager, or, an elected sheriff in his executive staff in his first term lost 6 of his executives. That's an undersheriff, assistant sheriff, and deputy chiefs. I worked for 5 sheriffs during my 31-year career in the Riverside County Sheriff's Department. I've never seen so many executive staff leave, and they all leave, and they all have a common denominator, quite frankly, is, most of them left because of the, dishonesty, and that's his character. He's an individual that speaks first with that, and based on what he thinks or what he believes, and not what the evidence shows, and then tries to craft his investigation or his justification for such false claims, by either fabricating evidence or misinterpreting evidence or just ignoring evidence, altogether.
I mean,
So you
that's the one thing. Sorry if you don't mind me stopping you. I mean, one of the things that's been baffling to me as I'm putting this together is that, for him to go so balls to the walls with a false narrative, so balls to the walls, right? Because even if I didn't have a recording, he went pretty outlandish, right? Now, the recording shows how far he went and what an immense liar he is, right? But for him to go that far, you have to have an exit strategy. I mean, that you can't expect somebody to just kind of roll over and be attacked by your lies like that. You got to expect some sort of boomerang that this is going to. I mean, you can't just relentlessly go after somebody with like such lies. Now, are you saying that ultimately his goal was he's just going to fabricate a bunch of evidence and kind of call it a day?
I think that's a high probability, or try to distort the evidence to fit his narrative. I've seen that, and in your previous, to give you an example on the previous, podcast you did with the anonymous caller. By the way, I spoke to a sergeant, and she told me that the department's catch team, the catch team, that unit is the digital forensic analysis unit, right? They go through phones, laptops, they scrub things, right? Apparently, she told me that they were scrubbing that voiceover concealment in your last podcast. And when I asked, well, what crime are they investigating? And she's like, oh, I don't know. I don't think there is a crime. So, a prime example here is, he's using department resources, criminal investigators to scrub your audio when there's no crime, because whether you're anonymous or you put your name on it or your face on it, like I do, you still have the right under the First Amendment to speak out against your elected officials, regardless of what they think. I find it very interesting that, and I listened to the podcast, and I can tell you that that last podcast was accurate. And this is I'm going to give you an example, because, that last podcast, names were identified, and the Dario versus Tinker. Dario is a single male dating a lady. X found out about it, filed a complaint, said it was embarrassing. He suffered adverse employment conditions, I would say, or discipline. And Tinker, Sergeant Tinker, he engages, him and his wife engage in, performing, sex or pornographic videos for open fans or fans only website where they earn money, right? What's more embarrassing? The embarrassing part of, Dario's lady's ex filing a complaint because, he's scorned, he can't get over it, or the Tinkers, advertising and promoting, their fans only pornographic website, and they will perform sex acts at your request, right?
I mean, I'm curious. Like,
let me just finish this one, sir. This is about conduct unbecoming, according to the Law Enforcement Code of Ethics, which Bianco subscribes to, which he says it's you take an oath to keep your private life unsullied, right? So who he interprets what's unsullied or not, right? So he interpreted Dario's conduct was unsullied, and therefore he suffered an adverse employment action. But yet Tinker's was not unsullied by performing pornographic videos with your wife for money. So all things being equal, one person, keep in mind, Bianco says he's this moral Christian value. Why did Tinker not suffer any type of adverse employment discipline and Dario didn't? So I will tell you this from my perspective, right? And He was told, I know he was told, because they have a meeting and to discuss all the discipline, all the internal investigations regarding staff. But he didn't want to listen, so he imposed this adverse effect on Dario and nothing on Tinker. All things being equal, why does the minority employee get disciplined and suffer an adverse employment action, and the Caucasian employee gets absolutely nothing? All things being equal, when you look at it, if you're this Christian sheriff, have these moral values that you're imposing on your employees, why are you only imposing them on the minority and not the Caucasian? I'll leave it at that, because that is very factual on your last podcast.
Do you think this man is still trying to run for governor after all that's happened? And what is his realistic path in that direction?
Well, I don't realistically. I don't think he can win the office of the governor in California, just based on the political dynamics of the state. You know, he said he wasn't going to do anything until I think we passed Proposition 36, which is, you know, taking those misdemeanor violations for theft under 950 and loosening up or lowering that monetary value to make it a felony. Now, with that being said, clearly the stats show that Riverside County is solving less than 6% of their property crimes. So I'm not overly concerned if it's going to be a felony or a misdemeanor. Both are enforceable. Both are arrestable, right? Both you can be put in jail for. You know, if you're not solving the crimes today, what makes you think you're going to solve them tomorrow? I mean, the Proposition 36 was a political tool for him, in my opinion, for him to get more statewide recognition in his attempt as he's going to run for governor, right? I'm okay with Proposition 36. I had no issues with it. You're going to enforce it. I had no problems with Proposition 47 or AB 109. You know, the legislator changes the laws, and we in the law enforcement profession need to adapt and follow the law, you know, and make those necessary enforcement. If it's a misdemeanor, you can still arrest them for a misdemeanor. You have people going into these retail clerks, right? Retail stores, and they're stealing stuff. Why can't you do conspiracy to commit burglary? Because combined, they're stealing in excess of $950, you know, as a group, you know. But that's not beneficial because they want Bianco wanted and most of law enforcement wanted to return to the, you know, $350 or more, and it's a felony, you know. But if you're not solving the crime, it doesn't matter what the value of the property being stolen if you're only solving between 4 and 6% of your property theft crimes. So I think everything he's doing is now being gauged for his political run. So
after this whistleblower thing, you know, what I've heard is that it's had a profound effect over there in their department, and apparently Bianco's been running around. Let's talk a little bit more about this whistleblower piece that was just done and the kind of effect that it's had, and anything else that you know about that whole occurrence.
Okay. Let's talk. It's been a while since I listened to it when it came out. So let's talk about, for example, the one-day wrap. Okay. That I would encourage, you know, that's already been done. It's already been paid for by taxpayer money. Right. And my understanding is listening to the podcast that wrap was already done. And then they realized they violated purchasing requirements. Right. So they went out.
Supposed to get bids. They're supposed to get multiple bids.
Correct. They're supposed to get multiple bids, a minimum of 3 bids, and you pick the typically the lowest one, right? So my understanding, they went out and they did get bids after the job was done. So my question is, you know, this is easily resolved. Sheriff Bianco should just come up and show this was the bid by one day wrap, this was the cost, and these were the other bids that we received. Simple as that. This is not.
I mean, how bad of a thing is this? How severe of a thing is it that they've done, or is it just evidence of further wrongdoings?
Well, it's an evidence of, let's say, favoritism toward one vendor, It could be construed as bribery, because if you look at it, I would imagine, right, based on what I'm seeing on social media, is that as soon as they awarded, they didn't award it because I don't believe there were bids to be reviewed until after the job was done. As soon as One Day Wrap completed the job, there's videos of talking about, Sheriff Bianco's the best sheriff. Of course, you pay my company $100,000 to wrap a jail bus. I'm going to think you're great too, right? And then there's photographs on Instagram of them having dinner. Not only Sheriff Bianco, but his wife Denise and Assistant Sheriff Dave Lellever, one of his best friends. His other best friend is Donald Sharp, who's the undersheriff, right? And they got, and there's this thing that, who paid for that? If not, you got to claim it. There's this Form 700 that you fill out, and I'm sure every state has their different programs or policies when someone offers you a gratuity or a bribe because you done gave them $100,000 to wrap your bus, that's where the conflict occurs.
Do we know how much extra it was than the other kind of next bid, I guess?
We don't know and that could be easily resolved by, Sheriff Bianco showing the bids, right? These are public records, right? These are agency public records. If you're not going to show the bids, right, I would encourage you, and I would encourage your listeners, if you know anybody who had put in a bid to do a wrap around a Riverside County MCI jail bus, I would encourage you to reach out to Mr. Miller, provide him with your bid, right? And then we'll see. Then we'll see what your bid was. And then I would encourage everyone to ask, Sheriff Bianco for the invoice. What did the department pay for this 100? Reportedly, it's 100,000. I don't know what the price is, but I'm pretty sure it's expensive to wrap a bus. And one of those big long, it's like a Greyhound bus. It's an MCI bus.
Yeah,
I'm
totally,
sure.
Yeah.
So
we saw
this allegation, right, and what's going through the department can be easily resolved by showing the bids and showing the invoice of payment. That's it. But Sheriff Bianco won't do that. Why? And if he doesn't do that, it then further, solidifies the fact that there was probably some corruption and some bribery going on here, in my opinion, as a person outside looking in.
You think the company is kicking him back some funds for giving him the contract?
Well, they had dinner and they went to a concert together. Did you have those pictures?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you can find them on Instagram. If they're not scrubbing their Instagram. So yeah, that is a form of conflict of interest, maybe corruption, and maybe true bribery in its true sense. Because what kickbacks are you getting? Free dinner, free concert tickets, and what else? Is your family and friends getting their vehicles wrapped? I don't know. So that could easily, but they're not going to do that, right? Because that's going to further solidify the fact that, hey, how are we going to cover this up? And if you look at Chief Hall, he was a chief when he did that. Now he's an assistant sheriff. Kind of makes you wonder, if you do the sheriff's bidding, whether it's if it's unethical, irresponsible, unprofessional, inappropriate, you'll get promoted. And that's just my opinion. As a person, with 31 years in the sheriff's department, I've seen a lot. So that particular one, and then I know of another one I'll briefly touch on. This was when down in, I want to say it was before I retired, I believe, down at the Coisburg Detention Center. It was the Southwest Detention Center. It's the jail outside of the city of Murrieta. It's in the unincorporated area. They needed a new hood vent, and that hood vent was roughly $168,000. That's pretty reasonable to come in, remove commercial grade hood vents in the kitchen at the jail, and install new ones. Nothing major to do other than remove and replace and repair anything that that needs to be repaired in regards to maybe an exhaust system, nothing. So they hired a company, And then they did a change order, which pushed that project to over $400,000, right? So you have a significant change order in replacing the hood vent at the jail in Marietta. You have to go out to bid. You have to request for a quote for that. Now that this company is saying, no, we need a change order. We need this, this, and this, right? No, instead, they just granted that company okay, we're going to pay you 400K. So my question is, in that particular one, why didn't they go out to bid? This company is supposed to be connected, has some type of connection to the administration. I don't know, because, at the time it was being questioned, everyone was told to shut the hell up, and that was questioned in an open forum, even when I was the captain at the Elsinore station, they jacked up roof repairs. First they denied roof repairs, and then when the roof's been leaking for a decade, evidence being lost due to contamination and destruction from the rain, all they did to repair that was $80,000 to put a water sealant on it, on top of a roof. $80,000 to roll a water sealant. I then retired after that. It was just absolutely amazing. So who's getting kickbacks? I don't know. Why are these costs so much? I don't know. But they can easily, these rumors going out through the organization about the corruption that is going on in regards to purchasing, can easily be debunked by opening the books up and saying, hey, I am a servant of Riverside County, and this is what we're doing with our taxpayers' money. But isn't right? Sheriff Bianco says he's not doing he that. Is the most transparent. No, he's not. But he, in the same breath, this is, his character of deceit and deception and lies is, oh, I'm the most transparent sheriff ever. But okay, well, why don't you debunk these allegations going through the department and produce the request for quote, produce the bid, and who got the bid? Not only produce them, but the line items. There's never been a line item. I'm told that, the captains don't see the line items cost of these projects, right? Because they're stupid. They're stupid. They're inflated. One captain I spoke to, he said, "What the hell is a design feature bill? A design cost. This is a jail. Everything's the same, stays the same. When we fix it or replace it, it stays in the same spot. We're not redesigning anything."
Yeah. Wow.
So, and captains.
It seems like, but how much of this stuff is provable, you think?
Well, you can't really prove a lot of it because they have the documents. So that would dovetail back to this One Day Wrap quote. Nothing against One Day Wrap. I said it before and I'll say it again. They're a good company. They do incredible work, right? They do really good work. But the responsibility is upon Sheriff Bianco, right? You're socializing with this vendor. Who's buying the dinner? Who's buying the drinks? Who's paying for the concert tickets, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, are you? Because the picture I saw on Instagram, there was 20 of them. Do you think Sheriff Bianco and Assistant Sheriff Dave Lelever are saying, "Can you separate our bill, please"? No, they're not doing that. They're accepting that bribe. I would normally call it a gratuity, but I'm going to call it a bribe because that's what I think it is. Because they got. I'm pretty confident if he doesn't come up with the billing invoice, the request for quotes from all the companies.
So he was paying. Who was paying for it? They're paying for
it. That's my pure speculation and belief that you don't go to a party with a vendor and the vendor saying, "Hey, split the bill." Think about it, just you know what I'm saying? The vendor's not going to say, "Hey, this is just for my staff," but you got to give the sheriff his own check.
And that's not happening. Party for how many people? This is Bianco's people?
No, I in the photograph it had Sheriff Bianco, it had his wife, it had Assistant Sheriff Lelever and his wife. Now all the other people, I would imagine, I would speculate that those are one day rep employees or friends.
Gotcha.
So,
Gotcha.
um, you know, I've seen that picture, you know, and I'll find it. It was sent to me. I'll find it and I'll send it to you, you know,
Yeah.
because it's on Instagram, you know. So that, and again, this could easily be debunked if Bianco, if it's truly service above self, produce the document so the community can rest easy on this topic. But it's not. It's self-serving. It is very self-serving for him because he's more concerned about his political career than he is protecting and serving, right? And think about it, just like that Fox 11 News where he debated. He can't tell a lie, but you see, he tells a lie all the time. He also said that there's only one badge that matters, and that's his. And there's only one sheriff's uniform deputy sheriff uniform that matters, and that's his. So that tells you it's all about him and not the most important people in the organization is the community service officers, the office assistants, the deputies, the correctional deputies, the investigators, the corporals, and the sergeants, you know, and very rarely a lieutenant, you know. But, you know, if it's all about him, what's left for the employees to use to do their job and protect and serve the community?
So let me ask you about the lies aspect. Like, how many people with the false evidence thing, right? Now, he was clearly trying to, because, I don't know how he was going to frame me for this thing, but you can't do it unless you're going to create false things, right? So I'm assuming that in my case, false evidence was a part of his plan. Now, do you know about others he's done this to, and could you elaborate?
Well, the one that I can, truly discuss, is the Sam Flores case. There's, and I think I discussed this the last time we talked. Deputy now investigator Nicholas Jones, he abruptly retired after this case, right? He testified to one thing in the grand jury, then testified to the exact opposite in the trial. Now, and that's in the transcripts, and then you can look at Sergeant Joseph Greco.
So you're saying so you're saying that in that instance he changed his testimony because he had pressure on him from Bianco?
I'm saying he lied in the grand jury because of, in my opinion, undue command influence. Because when the Flores matter was discussed, initially it was discussed at a commander's meeting, and then questions started flying. Well, wait a minute. One question I had, and I posed that to Donald Sharp, who was the undersheriff. Why are you putting a 6-year deputy in charge of this investigation? And he said it was politics, Mike. It's politics. And my response, and I remember it vividly, was like, oh, so you can manipulate this young deputy. And they did. I think they manipulated and intimidated this young deputy to the point of no return. And in return for that, he got promoted to investigator. And in return for that, he got assigned to the Central Homicide Unit. He testified in court that he was involved in 68 homicide investigations. Wait a minute. You're lying to the grand jury. You're lying to this jury. You just now jeopardized 68 homicide investigations that you were involved in. So there's going to be defense attorneys out there wanting to know who did this interview, where's the report, and if he did do an interview and there was a report, is it true? So prime example. I'll give you two examples related to Jones. Nicholas Jones testified in the grand jury, right? Dave Allen, Deputy District Dave Allen, said the CHP service tow agreement was the tow service agreement that was used by the Temecula station under the command of Captain Lisa McConnell. Nicholas Jones testified that they all signed it. Now, fast forward to the trial, Nicholas Jones testified that there were no CHP signed service agreements and they didn't have one. So why lie? They lied in 2020 for the indictment, right? Because that's the key. Get the indictment, right? He lied to get the indictment. Second thing he lied about, he used what's called a tow rotation schedule. So there were, I think, 5 or 6 tow companies that they rotated every week to tow vehicles on behalf of the sheriff's department, right? And then he used the wrong tow schedule where he came up with some stupid amount. I don't know, 90 tows, right? And like 58 of them were out of rotation, or it could have been 98 out of rotation. So he used the wrong tow rotation, and he knew he used the wrong tow rotation because that number went down to like 20 during the trial. So why? But they got their indictment, right? So he knew that he used the wrong one, right? He used one that was dated in 2018 and one that was dated in 2017, right? Each page is dated differently. And it's a 2-page rotation. And the revision date automatically populates. So what happened was he took, in my opinion, as an investigator, he took one from 2017, another from 2018, put them together and said, this is the rotation tow. But what he failed to tell the grand jury is that every one of those any one of those tows were legal tows. They were legally lawful tows. Yes, they went to another a single tow company from a single deputy, and that was it, a deputy Kevin Carpenter, right? Well, when you start looking at numbers like 98, 58, that's alarming, right? Mm-hmm. But when you look at it over an 18-month period and it comes down to 18 to 21, all of them legally towed, all of them were lawful, but were towed to the non-rotation tow company. Now, there was no policy at the time that's saying that you had to abide by the tow rotation. In fact, there was a little asterisk on the bottom that says, that the deputy can pretty much call whoever they wanted on rotation.
Wow.
So, but the goal was to get a conviction, get an indictment, get a conviction. So, Sheriff Bianco could say that he is strong on corruption. We're going to stamp out corruption in the organization, right? But if you are really serving the community, then you would be as transparent as you claim you're transparent, and open those books up, open those bids up, and let's see. Because think about it. If you're being accused of quite frankly, attempting to assassinate, and you're standing up and saying, "Hell no, you're wrong. This is bullshit." Do you think he's doing that? All this stuff he can debunk, all this purchasing requirement violations and drinking and partying with the vendor that you just gave $100,000 to wrap your bus. All this could be debunked by if you just produce the documents and be transparent. All this could be, the staff is talking about, these outrageous prices. And when I'm talking staff, I'm talking sergeants and above who call me and they send me things. And hey, and feel free, those department members, you're more than welcome to send Mr. Miller stuff. You're more than welcome to mail stuff to me. I love the U.S. Postal Service. I get a lot of stuff in the mail. If they start screwing with the Postal Service, those are federal violations. Nobody puts their name on it. They just, I don't want your name on it. They send me stuff. I look at it, and I say to myself, wow, this can't be. And on another note, how insecure.
Talking about evidence of stuff you're saying.
No, they're sending me stuff of misconduct on sheriff's administration's part.
Gotcha. Okay.
So and I would encourage them, keep sending me if you want something for me to comment on. I comment. I consult all the time with people. People call me all the time and say, "Hey, what would you do about this? What would you do about that?" I never identify anyone, and they don't identify me. And I always refer them to their lawyer. Hey, you need to get with your legal rep on that. Your lawyer through the association. They're there for you. So I always encourage. People to get reputation, and anyone who's listening, always invoke your constitutional rights because they're your rights. And if you don't invoke your rights, then quite frankly, remember the second sentence in the Miranda admonishment. Anything you say, it can and will be used against you in a court of law. And we as a profession mean it. Our number one goal is to safeguard your constitutional rights. And that's how they do it, by giving you this admonition. But you need to say, I invoke my rights, and I know I'll tell you one case, that I heard that from an individual where, one employee attacked another employee, and Bianco violated county board policy C25 by not taking any action,
Wow.
That's very, and that employee is reportedly a lesbian. So she's a self-proclaimed protected class, but you don't get to commit battery, sexual battery, assault all on the same day because you're a lesbian. That has nothing to do with violating the law. But yet, yeah. Bianco opts to not take any action on it
because he's playing politics. Basically,
he's playing politics. And I will tell you this. And here's another. This is how insecure I believe Sheriff Bianco is. He tracks, what people do on the computer. Because you have your IP address, and your IP address he shares. So he goes in there and he has, like, if you're a commander, or lieutenant or something, you might want to check your IP address, see if it's sharing with another IP address. Just a little note from a former captain.
Wow.
Everything you type in the keyboard, and it goes direct. They know about it because you're sharing your emails and stuff, and it's all county property. But it's the mere fact that you're really spying on your commanders and your lieutenants and other certain people. So
you're saying some pretty serious stuff here. I mean, especially when you're talking about he's making people lie on the stand. I mean, talk a little bit more about that. That's pretty insane.
Well, I mean, again, that was the transcripts speak for themselves, right? The transcript. I'll give you another example. Sergeant Joseph Greco, he retired from the sheriff's department, right? He testified in the Flores matter. The deputy district attorney, Natasha Soresi, I remember, because I've known Joe for over 30 years. He's a hell of a guy. I have nothing but great respect for him, right? I've known him a long time. We're in the hallway. He comes into the hallway, and he arrives, right? And then all of a sudden, he's swept away by Nicholas Jones, Investigator Jones, right, from the sheriff's department, and Natasha Soresi. They get on the elevator. They leave, right? They come back. Joe takes the stand, right? Two things I noted when they left. Joe Greco had a 3-inch, 3-ring white binder in his hand. Those are all his notes, right? All his reports related to this Flores case. When he came back, he didn't have it anymore, right? Where were they? Because those notes and those reports are discoverable. They're exculpatory information that should have been turned over to the defense. But they weren't. But he came back, right? He came back. He testified. Deputy District Attorney Soresi showed him 2 photographs of this beach house in Oceanside, and this was a part of the whole bribery case. He authenticated that beach house. She knew, or should have known, or should have did her due diligence. She should have known that Joe Greco never ever been to that beach house, never seen that beach house, and keep in mind this case is 5 years old. When it went to trial, right? She knew that. I'm telling you right now, she knew that, because when the defense attorney asked him why he lied, she hesitated before she objected, right? He never answered the question on why he lied. The defense attorney actually said, I have no further questions for him, right? So why do you put on a witness that has never seen this beach house, never been there, never drove by it, reportedly saw a picture of it from Mr. Flores 5 years ago, and he says, I don't know, it might have been it. And then under cross-examination from the defense attorney It's like, well, it kind of looks like, I don't know. No, you don't identify it. She should have never had him identify it, but she probably said, this is the beach house. Can you just identify and authenticate it? All right. That's subornation of perjury and warrants a bar complaint, quite frankly. In some of her filings, she consistently puts that, Sam Flores should have known. If he didn't know, he should have known. He should have made him aware, So she should have known. So I'll use her words. She should have known. Greco never been to the beach house, never seen the beach house. It's been 5 years since he thinks he saw what that picture was, So no, and to understand this, it was a Google Maps picture. How lazy is that? We don't drive to the location and take nice digital pics of it. That's the Google Map things is absolutely lazy because you don't know when that truck or that vehicle drove by and snapped pictures of it. You don't know what the condition was today as in comparison to 5 years ago, right? So we're, this whole subornation of perjury, I truly believe, and what gets me the most is after this case, the verdict, I disagree with the verdict, right? Because they came back a guilty verdict. I disagree with it because I've seen all the text messages, right? Especially the ones when their star witness, Kevin Carpenter, the deputy who was towing cars at 2:00 in the morning while Sam Flores was sleeping, and they blame him. He's a lieutenant. He's like 5 ranks above a deputy, right? What does a lieutenant have to do with, a deputy towing a car on 2:00 in the morning on Saturday or Sunday morning? Absolutely nothing. The watch commander, the on-duty sergeant who supervises everybody, is the one responsible, right? But they created this theory, this fictitious theory, and I find it difficult to believe that the deputy district attorneys, Soresi, deputy district attorney Dave Allen, they work closely with the Riverside Sheriff's Department and all other law enforcement agencies that they don't know the chain of command. So after this, after Jones's, quite perjured testimony, in my opinion, and I'll battle that any day of the week and twice on Sunday with anybody. He quit. He abruptly quits. He abruptly resigns his position.
And
11 years with the sheriff's department.
You think
I think his conscience got to him. I think his conscience got to him, and I think he knew what was coming down the pipe. I think he knows that now that we have transcripts, now that we have sworn testimony, it's clear. It is clear as day that he lied. And if he wants to challenge me on that, I'm more than welcome to sit with him because he testified he interviewed a witness, and he didn't. He didn't provide a report. He didn't provide a recording. I tracked down that witness later on, interviewed that witness, recorded my interview with that witness. Me and another defense investigator recorded that and never heard of Jones, never been interviewed by Jones or anyone. So, and I think I said that on last podcast. So when you look at, I think the big things that we need to understand is the character, right? The Christian moral values and character of Sheriff Johnny Chad Bianco are not really Christian-like whatsoever. He is willing to lie. As an elected official, I can accuse you. I can tell you, in my opinion, that I think you're a liar. I think you're deceitful. I think you're dishonest. And if you prove me wrong, I would be happy to apologize to you. So, Sheriff Bianco, prove me wrong by producing the one-day wrap invoice, the request for quotes from all of the companies, right? Prove me wrong. And prove me wrong that this hood vent went from 168,000 to 400,000. I'll get back on your podcast, sir, and say, hey, I'm sorry, I was wrong on this point, I was wrong on that point. Yeah. But he's the most transparent. He's the most transparent sheriff. Reportedly, he self-proclaimed, I should say. So let's do it. Let's do the service above self. You created that motto. You took you trade before for above, because that's the Air Force Academy. My dad spent 28 years in the Air Force, right? And the Air Force Academy is a service before self. He took it service above self. Cool. God bless you. It's a great, motto, but you got to live by it. You can't just, it can't be convenient. Oh, I got another question that I like to pose. And I posed this when I was working, but it continues. Sheriff Bianco, is a member of Sandals Church. Why is the department holding promotions and functions there? Is the church getting paid?
Oh, is that what's happening? They're actually doing functions and stuff?
Yeah, they do promotional ceremonies there,
Wow.
And that's you. If you're going to do something at a house of worship, that's related to the department. Let's be fair about it. Maybe spread it around a little bit. And is Sandals Church, are they getting? I'm probably going to make every parishioner is probably going to hate me now, but the question, it bears answering that, why are we at Sandals Church on Van Buren, I think, in Porter? We have promotional ceremonies there. Why?
Mm-hmm.
Why can't you have it at the Clark Training Center? Why can't you have it at when I got promoted, when, under the 4 previous sheriffs, they had it at Sheriff's Administration. They have a media room there, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's, why can't you have it at a convention center and pay for it if there's so many people that show up? So, I do know this, when the street racing team was developed, it originally started by a member of Sandals Church that came over to the church, and some idiot or multiple idiots were doing donuts in the parking lot, and that really pissed off, the parishioners that, and the people that go to the church. And I was told that, the whole street racing team was developed out of doing donuts in Sandals Church's parking lot.
Wow. So where is Bianco now, you think, with all of this stuff that's been coming out? And now I'm hearing he's running around from station to station, talking to people about everything that that came out apparently on this whistleblower podcast is all lies. I mean, where is he at right now with all of this, you think?
Wow, you got some good people calling you, or putting stuff on your I haven't seen your whistleblower tab lately, or people calling you on your 702 number. I've heard the same thing. I call it a damage control disingenuous station tour. So now, and he's doing it, which is kind of odd. Usually he dispatches the undersheriff, Don Sharp, or assistant sheriff Lever, because they're going to, and the Hall and Lopez, they're going to say whatever needs to be said, to protect Bianco and mislead the staff. So he goes around, and my understanding, he's saying that everything said in the podcast was 99% false. Well, okay, well, which one was false? We already know about the Tinkergate. We already know about Hall. We already know about who was it? Dario. I'm trying to think of all the stuff that was said on that podcast, because I recognized and identified, all of it from when I was employed, and shortly after that. So here's an opportunity. He's doing damage control. He's going around and telling everybody, don't believe it. It's all lies. Well, if it was all lies, right, and why are you worried about lies? Don't worry about it, right? Why are you taking catch and scrubbing that voiceover to find out who the whistleblower was? So that, I mean, that's damage control. That's the way to manipulate the deputies. And if you were hired within the last 3 years, it probably going to work for you. But tenured deputies they know, they've been here when all this crap has gone down, and his mismanagement and his leadership. I remember when he promoted his brother to lieutenant, and he didn't rank high on the list, but his rationale was, well, he got screwed over. That's why he was so low on the list. Really? I'm thinking maybe you just tested poorly, right? But I could be wrong, But regardless, a list was made, and you bypass protocol and the process and promoted your brother to lieutenant, then captain. Now he's a chief. So the nepotism and the favoritism is genuinely real. It's real. It is so real.
Wow.
My regret is I didn't learn how to play bunco. No, I don't regret. I don't regret not learning how to play bunco.
Is bunco a card game or something?
Bunco, I don't know. It's some game that they play, and it's something that everybody, the female, a lot of the female staff play it with his wife, and oddly enough, they were getting promoted. So there are two things can happen: donate 10,000 to the campaign, or play bunco, and you'll get promoted.
Wow. What a politician, man. It's literally a politician. It's like not a sheriff.
Well, I think, if you look at our supervisory election, he adamantly opposed supervisor-elect Jose Medina. Jose Medina is big on accountability. He wants to hold the sheriff's department accountable for and have oversight for our public safety, our county public safety departments. And I welcome any type of accountability, because I know I didn't do anything wrong. They tried to set me up. They actually in November of 2020, an off-duty employee got in an accident, and I had a sergeant that was under my command, a corporal and 2 deputies, and there was 4 civilians, and said this off-duty employee was not intoxicated. So they contacted a Lieutenant Fredericks, and a Lieutenant Bumpancero, to do an investigation on me and this individual. And they were tasked to basically find this individual to be DUI and find out, and let's get Lujan for a cover-up. And I know this because I talked to the lieutenant. Sheriff Bianco bypassed the entire chain of command, contacted Lieutenant Fredericks, and summoned him to the office and gave him his tasking order. It ultimately, they said there was no crime here, but they ultimately, one of the things Sheriff Bianco likes to say in these meetings where they discuss employee misconduct, keep looking. I was told there was, keep looking. Well, the evidence says there isn't, but you want us to keep looking. And I know of a few cases where that has occurred, but more specifically, they took this case. The lieutenants did what they were told to do.
It's almost like him encouraging him to make up stuff.
Correct. Absolutely. Correct. They took this case to the DA's office, and it's called the DA staffing. They staffed the case. They presented this case to 3 supervising deputy district attorneys, right? And, I worked homicide for almost 10 years. So I know a little bit about investigations. And I know people throughout the DA's office, the hardworking men and women within the DA's office, from the Riverside office to the Indio office, to the Murrieta office, to the Banning office. And they knew everybody involved in this case. And they said, you don't even have a case. Why are you here? They said, how are you going to get over the fact that the sergeant and the corporal, did the investigation and said the employee was not drunk? How are you going to get past the 4 civilians, 2 motorists who stopped to render aid at the collision? The guy was texting his wife saying, I'm on my way home. And he veered to the right and hit the curb. And when you hit the curb, you hop the curb, right? And then you hit a lamp post, right? Nothing major. And then the 2 pedestrians. So you have 4 civilians, 4 deputies on duty, a sergeant, a corporal, and 2 deputies, all saying that he's not drunk. But Bianco didn't care about that. And I very rarely, I didn't say much about this case because I didn't do anything wrong. Neither did that employee, but they were put through the ringers. That employee was forced to retire, and they put him through the ringer. I was already scheduled to retire because I gave my notice, 10 months in advance that I plan on retiring, but he didn't care, and it was that conduct that I don't care. Make it happen. It's not, if it doesn't happen, then you'll suffer adverse. Quite frankly, these two lieutenants probably should have been promoted to captain, but they're not. One, I think one left, because it wasn't the outcome that Bianco wanted. I don't think he cares about evidence. I think he just cares about what he thinks without reviewing the evidence, without even evaluating the evidence, and make a decision and try to craft the evidence to his outcome. So, which is very prejudicial to his staff, to his employees, because you already have a predisposed disposition of the outcome. Now you're forcing other employees to lie about it to meet your goals and your objectives instead of following the evidence.
I mean, it sounds like honestly, man, it sounds like a lunatic and a sociopath. It doesn't sound like a sheriff.
Well, I can tell you that a lot of the employees, a lot of the active employees, a lot of the retirees characterize him as a very narcissistic, arrogant son of a bitch. I can say that on your podcast, right?
Yeah.
I can say okay, that a lot of it. A lot of people say that, and they don't. Another thing is they don't dare, talk about his family. He hired his daughter. She didn't make it off training. I think she's back in the department. I'm curious. I think they sent me a picture of her in uniform again. I go, what? She didn't make it off training. I mean, at the end of the day, you got to be the deputy in the car, serving the community and protecting victims and apprehending suspects, or helping, the elderly cross the street. You got to do it all, but at the end of the day, if you can't do that, I don't care who your dad is, you're going to get hurt or you're going to get someone else hurt, and you don't deserve to wear the uniform and do the job. You just can't do the job.
What is the deal with his daughter? I mean, how is she performing?
If the information I received is that nobody questions, nobody does nobody cares. The only thing you do when you say, hey, you screwed that up, is you're going to be transferred. You're going to get what's called freeway therapy. Nobody does that. Nobody. His son-in-law, her husband, worked for San Bernardino County, and he came over here without an issue. Does whatever they do, whatever they want, when they want. That's the, I guess that's the privilege of having your father-in-law and stepfather as the sheriff. So that is what I hear from the current department members.
Like carte blanche royalty, basically.
Yeah, I kind of equate it to a cross between Law and Order and Blue Bloods, because now we're changing things. Now there's a major crimes unit, and then now there's a major victims unit, and the Biancos are the Reagans of of RSO. Next thing you know, I'm surprised he hasn't created a super chief position, because that came out on Blue Bloods series. I think in one case there was a crisis, and he said, and my phone blew up on this, because a lot of my friends watch Blue Bloods, and they said, hey, that guy said, assemble my chiefs and super chiefs. Are we going to have a super chief classification? Let's be real. We're 4,000. The department is 4,000 employees, both sworn and non-sworn. Not 35,000. Not actually, I think there's 38,000 in New York. So the perception is within the organization that this guy, he has this dynasty, his legacy. It used to be a badge of Riverside County Sheriff. Then he put 14. He was the 14th sheriff, and with the victor comes the spoils. But a lot of people really, they like tradition. They like and they respect tradition. What else was discussed on that anonymous podcast? Because I don't remember all of it. Did you guys talk about RangeGate? Was RangeGate on there?
Refresh my memory.
RangeGate was the correctional staff was out at the range practicing, and it was a night call day. They were notified they had night calls, and that they said, okay, we can call, we'll come back, right? Because it was just a range day where you go practice, right? You reserve a bay and you shoot. The range master said, oh, no, we're low light conditions. We can qualify you right now. So several of the correctional staff were qualified. They qualified. So when you qualify, you fill out your form, you put your name, your ID number, your station assignment, and your gun. That's it, and you sign it. That's all you put down. The range master puts down the date and time that you qualified and whether you're passing score or not. So once you turn in the paperwork, you really don't see it after that. You can get a copy of it. They give you a copy of it, but other than that, you don't see it because you don't fill out the date and time you qualify. So eventually it was, usually quals are at 5 p.m. with low light conditions. But this time it was like 3:30, 4 o'clock, my understanding. And the range master deemed it was low light conditions. Let's qualify. So in one bay, you have correctional staff qualifying. One of them being Sam Flores' wife, who was a correctional captain. Now, the Flores name at that, was to Bianco is, not good. He would do anything to screw over the Flores, right? So anyone with the Flores name, right? But in the adjacent bay, you had sworn personnel. Those are deputy sheriffs who were in the field responding to calls for service, pushing the black and white. They were qualifying in low light conditions as well. Well, they determined that the documents, the range forms, the time and everything that was filled out by the range master, not the employee, that it was dishonesty. Well, the employee doesn't fill that out, the range master does. And if the range master determines they're a low light condition, let's qualify. Let's start qualifications. You start qualifications. Same thing did in the adjacent bay with sworn personnel. But I guarantee you, everybody on the correction side of that night that qualified, they all got fired. But everybody on the sworn side who was doing the same thing in the bay next door, the shooting bay next door, nothing apparently happened to them. The justification was that, they have calls for service pending, so we're going to give them a pass. So you're going to give them a pass, right? But you're not going to give corrections a pass because, Captain Flores was there, and I will tell you, once they went after Sam Flores, they did targeted his daughter who worked for the department. They plastered pictures of Sam behind prison bars and started accusing him of being a thief, a corrupt, a crook, right? Could you imagine, I don't know if you have kids, but could you imagine what a child, a young adult, early 20s, I think, young adult coming to work at the sheriff's department and see pictures of your dad, right? And the trial hasn't even started. Nothing started. I mean, this was, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, and just totally harassment in the workplace. And then when she complained to her supervisors, they did nothing. Mainly because of her dad and her last name being Flores, in violation of county board policy. It's called C-25, that prohibits sexual harassment and a hostile working environment. So that C-25 policy outlines how you were supposed to address this, but they didn't address it. They ran her out of employment, basically through their intimidations and their harassment. And you know what? It was okay with Sheriff Bianco. It was okay. Not a problem. It's the Flores. I'm going to teach this whole corruption thing, and I think I said on your last podcast, the captain is Lisa McConnell, former girlfriend of Sheriff Johnny Chad Bianco. So we're not going to hold the captain who signed off on everything, who commanded everything, who approved Carpenter to work overtime, who approved Carpenter, this sexual deviant Carpenter, based on the text messages and videos, to be the Explorer advisor. Do you imagine that? Explorer advisor, but we're going to blame the lieutenant. We're going to just blame it on Flores because Flores is friends with the tow truck owner. I mean, come on, right? But in that particular case, what they failed to do is, hold the same standard to the Lisa McConnell, who was using tow services and to tow their floats in the Thanksgiving and Christmas parade. They held Captain McConnell accountable for her free tickets to the Balloon and Wine Festival. There is so much gratuities going on in Temecula, in all our wealthy contract cities. But if you say one bad word about Sheriff Johnny Chad Bianco, he comes after you for life. I'm still, I live in a neighborhood where everybody has cameras. Our street is so covered; it has overlapping coverage. It's amazing because I wouldn't put it past him the 60 pounds of meth that he sold and lost on the street, throwing it in the back of my pickup truck, or sneaking up, I don't see that coming, but it comes to a point where really, if you're going to go this, if you're going to cross the line here, why don't you cross the line there? Quite frankly, I mean, if you look at under his leadership, we're selling dope, right? We're dealing dope in the jail, right? The deputy. We have a deputy who monitored the ankle monitoring system and was extorting sex from female who were on the ankle monitor program, right? Threatening to violate their agreement and put him back in jail. We had another deputy at Southwest who was high on duty. We just recently had a deputy arrested for Rodriguez in the paper for child porn that they've been investigating for the last 2 months, 3 months. We had a deputy arrested for beating spousal abuse. All that stuff, it gets covered up really good, but the membership is tired of it. The employees are tired of it, and they're bringing a lot to light about it. They always talk about it. So under the leadership of Chad Bianco, and from all the people I've talked to, they are really hungry for honest, ethical, and professional leadership. I mean, just tell the truth. Just come and tell the truth. That's all. You require everybody else to tell the truth. You go on TV and you say, I can't lie because the law says I can't lie. Bullshit. You lie all the time, Chad. You lie all the time. Yeah. I think you should use that quote of his and compare in any formal, in any formal amendments you do, because that is, that and his badge, and he's the only uniform that matters, and that tells you the level of his arrogance. It really isn't service above self when you say, my badge and my uniform is the only thing that matters. No. That's not service above self. That's selfless service. You're not doing the bidding of the community for public safety. You are serving yourself for your political aspirations. Yeah. I guarantee you, when he hears this, he's going to be mother effing me like there's no tomorrow.
When you what?
I said when he listens to this,
yeah,
he's going to mother eff me.
It's just baffling to me that somebody like this, of just such low integrity, clearly not a very smart guy. How is he holding on to his power? I mean, why is this even being allowed? He's like, it's like I haven't met somebody this foolish in a long time, and this guy's running a whole sheriff's department.
Right. Well, he's an elected official, so the only thing the board of supervisors can do, is hold them accountable with financing the budget, right? And I think a lot of the time, because it's very difficult to get the elected sheriff out unless there's proven misconduct, and that proven misconduct, I think, lies behind the purchasing agreement. Their purchasing requirements that they do. We used to have a lot of vendors, construction companies and developers, kind of vendors that live and work in Riverside County. And then ever since Robert Gunzel came over and brought his buddy Ramon from Orange County, we see nothing but Orange County, according to the staff, Orange County vendors. Now, I know a few people who work out of Orange County, and their assessment of Gunzel, who's retired or was allowed to retire under the cloud of ticket fixing, on his email and through the telling people don't show up for your subpoena, just don't show up. The case will be dismissed. Through then the Paris station captain, I think it was Matt Sims, and he's like, Matt Sims, a man with the utmost integrity and honesty, said, I ain't doing that, from what I understand. And I know Matt, he his integrity and honesty is beyond reproach, and I can see him doing that. So if people are saying that was what had occurred, I believe it wholeheartedly, so that's where I think where Bianco has allowed this to occur, has endorsed it, signed off on it, because there's other rumors floating around is that they get the more the contract is, for some reason, the more donations come in, whether these in-kind donations where, maybe an employer says, I'm going to donate 10,000 to Chad Bianco's campaign. And this is pure, speculation and hypothetically speaking, because people have said this, that they think that vendor is now having the employees donate to the Bianco campaign, so I think, money rules, money is evil, and that's why it's important that, in my opinion, based on the current environment of the sheriff's department, that I would hope that, Supervisor-elect Medina and the rest of the supervisors actually develop an public safety oversight committee as afforded to them under statutory law, signed in. So I wholeheartedly welcome that, because was that
to overlook Bianco?
Didn't you?
Yeah,
to overlook the department to ensure. Yes, absolutely. I mean, if I was the sheriff, I would welcome that wholeheartedly. I'd be like, yes, please. I'm one man, I would welcome outside eyes to give me recommendations and suggestions on how to improve the efficiency and the effectiveness of the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, right? I also would like you to provide me with, a very select few, of confidential nature to address any, help me address any misconduct and disciplinary actions. Of course, the final authority and the final decision would be the sheriff, right? But if you have a committee saying the evidence shows this, this, and this, it's much tougher for Bianco to say, I don't believe it, so I'm going to fire this guy and he can fight and get his job back in 2 years. Because that's his ideology. He's been, a former captain at the Professional Standards Bureau says that was his whole thing. Oh, just fire him and then they can fight and get their job back in 2 years and they'll be bankrupt. But okay, no problem. And so you'll see that, so.
Man, it's such a.
I don't shy from any oversight committee or anyone who could help improve the organization. You shouldn't shy away from that.
Yeah. Man, Michael, this is amazing, brother. Is there anything we didn't touch upon that you'd like to mention before we wrap it up?
No, you know what? I like to continue to encourage people to send things. You can send things to me if you're a department member, a former department member. You know how to get a hold of me. Send it to Mr. Miller. I know you have americahappens.com, and then you have a whistleblower tab on there. I hope I'm not speaking out of turn.
Our email,
Mr. Miller will keep.
Sorry, our email is americahappens@protonmail.com. So americahappens@protonmail.com. Feel free to send us anything.
Yes. And I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, Mr. Miller. We'll keep you confidential, and that's a relief. That's an outlet that the employees have. They get it off their chest, they get it off their shoulders, and say, "Listen, I put it," and be incumbent on the sheriff's department to produce the purchasing documents, the quotes, the request for quotes, the final acceptance of a quote, to quell all the information that staff really is providing, the current staff is providing. And, my understanding, there's going to probably be over the next 2 months, well, a month and a half now, there's probably going to be about 50 plus retirements, people leaving. People are leaving in droves, mainly because of the poor leadership, of the executive staff, and that's what they want. If they were wrong, if you were wrong as an employee, all you have to do is say, "Hey, dude, you're wrong, and this is why you're wrong." As opposed to sugarcoating and lying about it, saying they're going to be okay. Next thing you know, they're getting, suspended. They just want the truth. They want the truth on all aspects. And I said it before, and I'll say it again. It's not difficult. It's rather easy to tell the truth. Even if it hurts someone's feelings. Look in the mirror and ask yourself: are you being truthful? Are you being honest? Are you being ethical? Are you showing the integrity? I think you know what I'll do. I'll find it and I'll send it to you. You can take a look at it. The last graduation academy, my understanding is that Bianco was keynote speaker addressing the cadets, and it was all about him. I. So what does that tell you? The Riverside County, the hardworking men and women of the Riverside County Sheriff deserve leadership, servant leadership, not self-serving leadership, servant leadership, the leadership for them. Not just appeasing people because they want beards, but actually really giving them tools, and the training and education to be successful in their careers. It was an interesting. I haven't seen the II speech, and that my classmates are either dead or in prison. Tells you about his academy class, huh? But that's what was told to me. So I'll try to track it down. I'll let you take a look. I'm sure they have it on their social media, Facebook or Instagram or X,
Yeah.
But they told me about it. I don't feel the need to listen to someone tell everybody how a captive audience on how great they are. Servant leadership is the best way to improve, employee morale, enhance public safety, not, self-serving, political agendas like accusing you of being an assassin, which is, absolutely ludicrous, just based on what everybody knows about you.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy. This is why I want to keep exposing this stuff. And, for viewers out there, listeners out there, America Happens at protonmail.com. Send us what you got. And, we do a lot of whistleblower interviews, and, we got to expose it all. Michael, thank you so much, brother.
Oh, you're very welcome. And hey, for those hardworking investigators at the catch unit, don't worry about scrubbing this. I say what I say. I speak the truth. I speak my mind, and I stand by it. But I also know when I'm wrong, and I don't have a problem apologizing for it. So I would hope that, Bianco can prove me wrong on this purchasing bribery things that his staff is telling me and other people. So, hey, best of luck to you guys. Be safe out there. And, congratulations to Supervisor-elect Molina. I look forward to your leadership and your continued, support and contribution to the communities, So thank you very much, Mr. Miller. I appreciate you reaching out to me and allowing me this platform to speak as a retired captain with the Sheriff's Department, a concerned resident of Riverside County. And, I love the Sheriff's Department, and I'm a little disappointed on what it has become.
Thank you, Michael. And for the viewers out there, make sure you check out AmericaHappens.com, where we have all of our shows posted. And I will see you all on the next episode of Blood Money.